podcast at kcaaradio.com.
KCAA.
Live and in color from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful Southern California and in parallel from the Turf's Up radio studio in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thanks for tuning in to the Water Zone show this evening.
All right, a pleasant afternoon, a pleasant evening, and pleasant morning, depending on where you are in this wonderful world. Hope everybody's having great. I'm Rob Starr, along with the infamous Mr. Chris Davey, who is the magician at water hydrology, and I'm glad to have him as a host because we need some strong people. He's a good man. Right, Chris?
I appreciate it, man, although I said now after you saying the magician, I'm going to have to practice on my prestidigitation. So,
You'll do a great job.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, I wasn't saying anything. Somebody else.
Oh,
Miss Austin?
I'll tell you what, buddy, we are geographically adjacent this week for this show.
Yes, we are. I did.
I'm in Arizona.
I saw the billboards. Says Chris Davies on his way. Water Zone's going to happen here, and two locations in Arizona. So that's great. Well, you're only 15 minutes from me anyway.
Yeah, not far. My favorite part of the trip is when I cross over the Colorado River, and as you enter Arizona, the big sign that says "Leaving California, Welcome to America."
And there's another sign that's important: gas at $2.88 a gallon.
Oh yeah. Diesel. Well, my truck. I brought my truck because I had a load to haul here, but diesel is like $5.49 in California. So, and here it's $3.69.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Pretty good pricing. So I don't know. My Pam did that last week when she came back from an event she did with Children's Hospital in Orange County, and she times it or marks it so as soon as she crosses the border at exit number 1, she goes in and gets gas for the $2.88 a gallon because, like you said, California is just she paid $5.49 in California for gas.
Yeah. It's expensive.
Yep.
For sure.
Absolutely. Well, you know who we have on right now who's with us? Another person with a wonderful name, Miss Chris Austin, who's the owner, top bottle washer, anything you can call it. She's the big cheese at Nathan's Notebook. So, Miss Austin, welcome.
Hey, how you all doing today?
All right, Chris, welcome.
We are enjoying a nice warm day in the North State. So, actually, almost like tempting to put on the AC, kind of warm. But so far, so good. And, you know, Mr. Davey, your favorite time of year is coming up. Don't you know it?
Fishmas, isn't it?
It's Fishmas is coming. It is set for April 26th, so Merry Fishmas to you all. What is Fishmas, you may ask? That is when fishing season opens up in the Eastern Sierra, in the Owens Valley. And if you like to fish and you have not been to the Owens Valley, then there is I don't think there's going to be any better year to be there than this year. And we have nice conditions. There's water in the rivers and in the lakes. They have stocked it with fish, 40,000 pounds or more of rainbow trout.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be, they say, healthy water levels and mostly ice-free conditions. So, hey, if you like to fish, and you should go visit the beautiful Eastern Sierra. I mean, it's one of the least populated counties in California, and it's just gorgeous there. So.
Well, he'll be back.
And I'm not being paid to say that.
No, Chris, I got to tell you, I've been watching closely, right? I mean, everything is almost accessible, and usually by, mid-April like it is now, it's generally not, but all but the very high elevation lakes, like up above Mammoth, where you've got Lake Mamie, George, Lake Mary, those places, they're still inaccessible, but most of the other places are they'll be ready for Fishmas.
Yeah, and that's a great time to go up there. I think it's going to be spectacular. But when you're going up there, if you're taking your boat, then you should be aware California is very, very concerned about golden mussels. These are an invasive mussel that arrived from somewhere elsewhere than North America. They were just discovered in North America in Stockton back in October. And so as the recreational boat season starts ramping up, people need to be very aware of invasive species and how important it is to thoroughly decontaminate your boat to whatever the instructions are for whatever water body you're going to put in a lake. Recreational boats are one of the largest ways or easiest ways that invasive species can spread from lake to lake. And golden mussels these are really particularly nasty, although all of these invasive mussels are problematic, but they lock on to water infrastructure, to boat propellers, to whatever, and they grow just amazingly fast and cause, just amazing amounts of damage to water infrastructure, and not to mention the ecosystem as well. So it's important if you're boating. It's also, similarly important to remember when you're fishing, if you use wader boots, you need to make sure those are thoroughly cleaned before you go stomping from creek to creek as well. The problem with invasive species like the golden mussel is they arrive through international shipping, and we do have regulations in place that require ships to change their ballast water and now treat their ballast water. And this is certainly helping with the situation. But the truth is that there's no way to completely prevent invasive species traveling from port to port unless we shut down international shipping, which just is not realistic. But what it does mean now is we have lots of invasive species to be dealt with.
I guess it's hard to manage that whole thing, Chris, and a lot of it is public responsibility to make sure that if you go in a public water somewhere or BLM land or anything like that you're cognizant of that. Now, big lakes like Crowley and Pleasant Valley, where they have launch ramps, right? The only place you can launch. There are inspection points there at those lakes, and you can't enter unless you answer the right questions and you let the inspector take a look at your boat, and you get that little tag or that little sticker to go on your vessel.
But there's certainly going to be
where people. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say they're going to be doing inspections at all of, I think, pretty much any lake that you go to in California, as well they should be. So, you should definitely be prepared.
Absolutely, yeah. Go, Robert.
Oh, no, I was going to ask a question, but she answered it through that. I guess these mussel poisoning is due to toxic planktonic organisms that can be dangerous. So I guess these are something nobody wants to harvest and make for dinner.
Well, yeah, golden mussels. I think they're very small, so they're not. I guess kind of if you could eat them, they'd probably be like the sunflower seeds of mussels to eat, I guess. But but then you also have we're having another toxic algae bloom in the coastal waters off of California, really kind of around Southern California and the Central Coast. In some ways, in some areas, partially fed by runoff from the LA fires, but we've had this type of poisoning before. There's some very toxic organisms in this, and it's making the sea lions go nuts. Literally, in some cases, like I think one surfer was out in the water and had was kind of under attack by this sea lion, quite aggressive. He kind of used the word demonic, which I kind of chuckle, but just because the thought of it. But it's a real problem if you're out there, in the ocean and you have a marine animal that's wanting to attack you, but it's a result of this domoic acid poisoning. So they've been having quite the problem with that. Although, interestingly enough, LA County did say that it's now safe to swim on the beaches around, the Pacific Palisades and Malibu area. So, but they're still, the sea lions are still getting sick. So
they just released that the okay to go back in the water. I think just yesterday or last night, Chris, if I remember. But in the Inland Valley News, which is the local paper, in California, close to where I live, there was a sea lion story in there about the algae bloom and what it's doing, and it was like titled "Zombie Sea Lions" or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just erratic behavior from these guys. That's what you're talking about, right, Chris?
Yeah. And it's kind of, it makes a good B-movie horror story, sea lions on the attack. But yeah, this toxic algae is kind of making them a little nuts. So be careful. I guess one girl was swimming in the for junior lifeguard certificate in the ocean and got bit by one. So, really problematic. So.
Well, we just got to hope the sea lions don't like it too much, because then they'll make it illegal, and you'll have to buy it behind the 7-Eleven.
Oh, we can franchise that, right?
Yeah.
Make some money. So what else is new? What's happening with Sigma in California?
Well, there's a lot of talk about how farmland values have been going down in the Central Valley in particular, mainly because the implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And, it's really quite basic. Land without water is not, you can't do much with it. And so, we're all there. The farmers are really having to grapple with this. And it's really hitting the smaller farmers worse, I think, than the larger farmers. So, there's a lot of land for sale and small lots going. So it's not, this is the tough part of implementing the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or as we say, SIGMA.
Have they issued a lot of fines yet?
Well, it's not really going on fines. What they did is, all the act was passed, and so all these areas had to set up groundwater agencies and then develop a plan for their groundwater basin to manage it sustainably. And so all the agencies have done that. And then the plans that were submitted that were deemed inadequate then are subject to state board intervention. And so there's like six basins went over in the first tranche, and then another 3 were added a year or so later. And so they started to work on, putting these basins on probation. So the first one up was put on probation, and then once you get put on probation, you're required as a groundwater pumper to be metering how much you're taking and paying extraction fees to the state water board. And these are pretty, well, for farmers, these are significant fees. This is not cheap. And so they filed in court, and the court issued an injunction for the state water board, so they can't enforce that right now. And that case is winding its way through the legal system, and we don't know the outcome of that yet. In the meantime, the State Water Board has proceeded to work through this list of groundwater basins that are subject to possible probation, and they put another one on probation. And some of these other basins that are further down the line on the State Water Board's list have gone back and reworked their plans and submitted their plans. So some of those people will probably get taken out of the mix. But the ones in the hot seat is that first basin that got put on probation. So we're waiting to see the outcome of that case. But I don't think that the outcome is going to be that groundwater management is going to go away. I think it's here to stay, and we're going to have to get through some of these really rough situations. So we'll hope that that things keep going. I think the hard part is that to the folks in Sacramento, because the Groundwater Management Act applies to groundwater basins statewide, but the most problematic ones are the ones in the San Joaquin Valley. So, those are the ones that we hear about. I mean, all but one of the basins that could possibly be on probation are in the San Joaquin Valley. So we talk a lot about SGMA implementation. We talk a lot about the San Joaquin Valley, but it really applies to basins across the state. And implementing this act has been, the farmers have been really quite good about it, I guess. What's the word? They have complied. They all set up basins, the groundwater management agencies, as they were required to do. They developed their plans. They turned them in. Nobody, openly defied the law. So for the folks in Sacramento, the legislators, to them, it looks like SGMA's working pretty well because, look, most, all these basins are compliant, and we just got this problem area and then one little spot down south. But in the San Joaquin Valley, for the people there, it's a train wreck. I mean, it's really very difficult for them right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. I mean, it's everything's good intentions, but it never solves the problem to 100% of the users.
Well, so, I think the problem is that we can't. You can't look at a groundwater basin in a piecemeal manner. I mean, the folks that have surface water, and aren't entirely dependent on groundwater, they got surface water, and surface water comes into the basin, and it has it goes places, it interacts with the groundwater basin. And in fact, one could say, and it has been said, and this is where the science is pointing us all towards, all groundwater pumped is future surface water, right? Because that's where the groundwater, the molecules are moving to the lowest point in the basin, and that's where the river is. And so, in a way, all of the management is really getting put on the groundwater agencies, and the surface water people are kind of out of the conversation. And I'm sure that that's probably okay for them because that would be a very difficult conversation. But what what it really means, and I can't take credit for this. This was said by I heard this at a conference by a groundwater manager for that Tulare Lake Basin, and he said SGMA, or the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, isn't about groundwater as much as it is about surface water, because you can only pump the basin to the amount that you can recharge the basin. So you're all about getting surface water. So it's I think it's kind of pushing the entire management of the basin kind of unfairly, perhaps. I don't know, that's not the word, unrealistically on the groundwater basins. And I think over time they're going to have to figure out how to address each basin holistically, including the surface water that's coming into it.
I think they should put you in charge of a committee to drive that. Seriously, I mean,
Would you jump on that, Chris?
No.
she'd be really good. You'd be really good. One more thing before we go into commercial. I know that Delta, the levees are at risk at floods again, and they're looking at over $3 billion to fix it. What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, well, I mean, this is the hard part, because there are, I think, 1,100 miles of levees in the Delta, and very few of them are up for the challenge of sea level rise. A lot of them are on private land. I mean, that's really hard when you have if a private owner owns a levee that's been there for 100 years. I mean, levee projects, are $1 million projects.
Yep.
They're not the kind of thing that most farmers could undertake. So we have a problem where we have, lots of levees that are 100 years old or more, built before there was any real engineering to be done. And that's going to take some thinking to work on, Some of those levees are responsible for getting our drinking water, which is, the Delta Tunnel kind of feeds into that part of the discussion. And others are protecting, infrastructure on islands, some of it critical,
Right. I think the 3 million that I read is really a low number. I think it was just somebody taking a quick swag and saying, let's throw this number up, but I think it's really on the low side. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
So anything else exciting?
What can I say? It's spring in California, so, and there's water. I mean, that's the nice thing is, there's adequate water flowing. I mean, we'll still fight over it because we always do, but at least we're not arguing over every last drop. So this year there's water in the rivers, so, kayaking, fishing, although probably not salmon, but other fish, Fishmas, 40,000 pounds of trout up there in the Eastern Sierra. So
well, I've seen photos of Chris fishing and his results. He does really well.
Thank you.
So it's beautiful spring. Get out there and enjoy it, folks.
Yep.
Will do, Chris.
All right, well, we're going to take our little break, but first, the people that listen, please go to mavensnotebook.com. That's where Miss Austin does all her work, and it's incredible. She is the big boss. And again, I always say I can't believe how much data she puts out every single day, and we get it every day on our laptops, and you can get it your laptops, your phones, all different ways. But you can become a subscriber to her, going to mavensnotebook.com. You can also become a sponsor if you'd like to do that, and throw in a couple, I'll use the term shekels today, and, make her have a little smile on her face. And, again, this lady works tirelessly, and I'm very proud to say that she's been a great part of our show and makes us successful, so we appreciate that. So, Chris, I hope your listeners heard me, and they should go out and do it.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for your kind words.
You're welcome.
Have a great week, Chris.
We'll talk to you next week. And we're going to go to our commercial break and hear from our sponsors. And most importantly, we have a very good featured guest. And I'm going to let Mr. Chris Davey do the intro right after our break. So stick around. It's going to be a great conversation.
Time-saving tools I found for my customers is our app and our e-commerce feature. So customers actually have the ability to view all of their quotes in one place. If you contact your Site One seller, you'll be able to log into your account and see all your quotes in one place. And instead of jumping on the phone or waiting for your seller to call you back, you can approve it right from the website, and it will send a message to your sales rep to get it on order and reserve the material. Customers can learn more about these tools at their Site One branch, from their local seller, from their local CX specialist, and from SiteOne.com or by downloading the Site One app.
Water is one of the biggest expenses for communities, HOAs, universities, golf courses, and resorts. So keeping those costs under control, especially when rates are increasing while water supplies are being reduced, are often essential to a customer's survival. Managing water requires multiple skills, which is why it's been complicated and difficult until now. AquaTrack brings multiple skills and technologies together to help large system users conserve outdoor water and improve the health of their landscapes. AquaTrack's professionals are certified landscape water managers and certified landscape irrigation auditors. The company offers audit services, upgrade advice, technical expertise, and water use monitoring. We already manage irrigation water for the largest homeowner associations in Arizona, and we're prepared to bring our knowledge and experience to help others, including landscapers and designers. Give us a call and hear how AquaTrack saved one HOA some 430 million gallons of water and $200,000 in annual water expenses. AquaTrack is Arizona-based, and you can reach us at 623-594-8689. That's 623-594-8689.
Oh, well, all right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us over the commercial break here. Thanks to our sponsors as well. And welcome back to the second half of the Water Zone radio show program. I'm your host, Chris Davey, along with the all-knowing Rob Starr, who's poised at the other microphone here just a few miles from me. Rob, how's it feel to be just in the same state rather than two states apart?
I am honored to know that you're in my great state. We appreciate it a lot.
Well,
I know you're going to be doing well, and I know you brought your lovely wife with you, and you're staying with your daughter and she's your son-in-law. So I hope you have. And it's an early. If I got this right the other day, it's an early Easter trip. So anyway, we're glad to have you in the state. The state's much better to have you here.
Well, I appreciate it very much. And as I said, driving over here this morning, my favorite sign is when you leave California, you see the sign that says, "Leaving California, welcome to America." Yeah. It's a good sign. I like that. I'm going to turn it over to you, so go ahead. You bet. Listen, we just want to shout out to our listeners. We very much appreciate all of our listeners. Rob and I are very, very privileged to bring you the Water Zone every week. We certainly appreciate it. If you want to listen to this show or any previous show that we've done, you can do that at waterzone.podcast.toro.com. And thank you to Toro for being our prime sponsor. We have an absolutely fantastic guest today. His name is Ryland Dobson, and Ryland works for the World Wildlife Foundation. He's their International's Deputy of Global Water Stewardship. He's very actively involved in delivering water components for many or some of, I don't know how many, we'll let Ryland tell us, of all the World Wildlife Fund's largest global corporate partnerships. And he also works internally in the organization with a very important task to help scale up the capacity inside the World Wildlife Fund all around the world with companies that they work with to bring up the water topics that are so important. There's a variety of them and a multitude of them. So, Ryland, I'd like to be the first to welcome you to the Water Zone. How's it up there in Western Canada?
Oh, it's good. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a nice spring day. But yeah, good to be with you guys.
Appreciate it very much. One of the first things we do when we have a new guest on Ryland is we ask them kind of, how'd you get into this industry? What circuitous path or, what interesting story? How did you get into what you're doing today, Ryland?
Well, it could be a long story, but I'll give you the short version. I really university had done sort of environmental biotech, so very interested in kind of the environmental side of things, and worked with kind of a mining company back in South Africa to really understand what their water and sort of management and usage was, and quickly realized that I was more interested in how my project was kind of intersecting with the business. So what was the business case for really doing the work that I was doing? Went on to do my MBA, and really just tried to find a path that intersected between that kind of science and business. And yeah, WWF gave me that opportunity to engage with kind of global companies and discuss the topic of water. So that's how I got here.
Where can I ask you? Just a couple of other quick questions to kind of let our listeners know, because as I've asked you before, I noticed an accent. Where's that from? Where'd you grow up?
Again, long story. So I grew up born and raised in South Africa. Left there and went did some time in the UK before kind of heading over to Canada. So kind of moved around a little bit. So that's probably where the hint of an accent / combined with other accents is probably kind of featuring in what you're hearing.
Well, that's great. I'm going to let Rob ask a couple of questions, but I'm going to let him tag on after this one. But first of all, tell us about what your role is at the World Wildlife Fund. What's a day in the life of Ryland Dobson? It's
never the same. I can start with that. It's always kind of changing, but as you kind of said in the intro, you kind of have a bit of a global mandate. So generally, easiest way to think of WWF is a bit of a franchise. So each national office sets their own priorities. Our team kind of sits at international, so we provide a lot of internal support, as you had flagged, to our national offices. And I'm primarily kind of focused on that intersection between our work and corporate partners. So again, a lot of my kind of day-to-day job is working with our corporate partners. You could kind of describe it as kind of corporate consultancy, so working with the sustainability teams, helping them kind of craft and shape narratives with respect to strategy and kind of water, particularly through the lens of sort of a conservation NGO. But then also, as you also flagged, working with our kind of national offices to help scale up expertise and capacity within our network to kind of do more of what I do.
Well, Ryland, welcome to the show. This is Rob. How are you doing?
Thanks, Rob. Good, thanks, you.
How's the weather up there?
It's sunny today, so it's not raining. So.
Well, you guys were talking about the term water stewardship. And I know we have listeners who follow the water industry and are in the water industry and so forth. But for those of our listeners that are not very up to date on things, could you give us a bit of a definition so that everybody is on the same page?
Sure. Very quickly, we typically at WWF sort of rally behind the formal definition from the Alliance for Water Stewardship. It's very technical and very jargony, so I'd encourage people to go and have a look for that one. But effectively, you got management and you got stewardship, and probably an easy sort of non-technical analogy is to think about the two as sort of renting versus owning a property. If you're renting a property, you are incentivized to kind of manage the efficiency of your kind of energy use, your water use, etc., because you're paying those bills. But you're not necessarily incentivized to engage with the community, because most of the time renting is a bit more of a temporary thing. Whereas if you own a property, you're now more invested in that community, and so you start to engage a little bit more with the community around you and looking at those issues. So translating that to kind of water management is more of an internal sort of within your fence line. So just making sure you're efficient, you're kind of cleaning your water before it's discharged, etc. Where stewardship is starting to kind of go beyond the fence line and starting to engage in with other stakeholders to solve sort of larger challenges within a basin or catchment.
Yeah, we see a lot of headlines about global water crisis all over, and I guess the question is, in your view, how bad do you think the crisis is, and where would you say is the worst conditions?
I mean, it's a little bit of a tough one to answer in the sense that probably everyone on listening is aware that water is a local issue. So some of those headlines it's easy to kind of capture that sentiment, and it's not to sort of diminish that there are places where water is a massive issue and a massive struggle. But again, I think we have to dig below that headline and really understand, are we talking about water quantity? Are we talking about water quality? Are we talking about sort of access to sort of wash services, to really kind of understand that? But, as we're kind of seeing, these hotspots tend to kind of pop up. We had Cape Town and Day Zero, years ago, and now we're seeing kind of Mexico pop up a little bit, or Mexico City, in terms of the headlines. So, I mean, we're definitely seeing more of those, but again, it's usually kind of very kind of localized. And so again, that's what we work with a lot of our partners to do is take those kind of more global approaches to water and try and disaggregate them to kind of translate them into kind of more local action and implementation plans.
Well, just one quick follow-up question for me.
Yeah, sure.
They have a thing that they call atmosphere water harvesting. I don't know if you've seen any of the devices that do that. They say they can do millions of gallons a day by harvesting it out of the air. I know in places like Africa and those type of areas where you watch the National Geographic stories on how the animals are just searching for water and the elephants are going tramping through in the dust and stuff. Does anything of that sort take place in any of those, say, African nations and things to help boost water availability? Because water is drying up in the riverbeds that were there before, but they're not there anymore. And they got to wait till a rainy season hits. But other than that, they got to go through that long, enduring summer and dry spell. And is there efforts a way to do things like that there, or in places like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and I think, I mean, yes, definitely those kind of solution spaces are in place, but I think one of the questions that is less sort of commonly asked is, what's the root cause of some of those challenges? And if we are kind of looking to desalination to solve a sort of a quantity or scarcity related issue, for instance, is the underlying cause a sort of regulatory or policy imbalance, or what are some of those sort of underlying factors that potentially have a much more cost-effective sort of pathway to creating kind of more sort of positive impacts to alleviate some of that issue? So certainly those technologies have a place to play. But I think there's also a little bit of a caution that those kind of technologies can sometimes be put on a pedestal without actually kind of addressing some of those root causes. So I think that's also something that we, as a collective, we need to be a little bit more kind of cognizant of as we sort of think about how to solve some of these challenges.
Very, very good point. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I think Rob and I agree with that. Rylan, we've had so many guests on, who really tell us and describe just how much of a global issue water is. I mean, it's not just, the common things that we see here in the U.S. or North America for you guys up in Canada, but so many places on the globe where water scarcity is an issue, water security itself is an issue, just being able to get to it without, a threat to your life, and just the basic availability of clean drinking water and basic hygiene is just it's out of reach for millions of people on the globe. And I think that through the Water Zone, we just try and come out with stories and with guests that bring that acknowledgement and that reasoning to so many people, so many of our listeners, so that they can get a chance. So let me ask you about this. This is in relation to World Wildlife Fund's WWF. What do you think is the current state of corporate action on water, right? What your partners are doing, what everybody else is doing. I follow this, and we know that in late March, you guys released a report called GlobeScan, Future Water Agenda. Kind of start off by giving us the 30,000-foot view, Rylan, if you would.
Yeah, so we partnered with GlobeScan. They're a sort of a survey market or sort of polling organization, and they supported, or they do surveys, on other topics. But we kind of worked with them to survey over 30,000 people in 31 countries, and also over 350 sort of experts, sustainability experts, really just trying to get a pulse check on what do people care about with respect to kind of water? What are some of the challenges? What do they want to see from companies, from governments, and kind of just where are we as a community? So it was a bit of an opportunity for us to get a bit more of a data-driven sense check on where we are in order to help us kind of really frame what are the things we need to be doing better as a collective with respect to certainly corporate water action.
There are so many. There has to be so many people involved in this, Rylan. I mean, I don't know how many people there were, but can you kind of walk us through or tell us a little bit about how this work came about?
I mean, it was a bit of an ongoing piece of work for us. It kind of complemented a lot of what we're doing, and it's also really trying to, certainly for us, trying to kind of sharpen how we can add value as an organization to not only our partners but also the broader sort of corporate community working on water. So that's kind of was the underpinning for that work is to help kind of give us a bit of a direction. So I mean, we intuitively know what some of the challenges were, so some of the data wasn't necessarily a surprise to us, but it's always good to kind of have a data point versus kind of an intuition to kind of point to when you start getting on with things.
Yeah, so many things involved with water, when you look at all the aspects of water. And so what were some of the key insights from that research with respect to the corporate water action? I mean, I know you had, I've looked at it, truth be told here. So you've got kind of the 1, 2, 3, the river basins, the reduced water usage, and of course working on a big focus for collaboration with partnerships in different countries and all that sort of stuff. Can you kind of, boil down some of the top key insights that you guys derived?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a very comprehensive report, and I'd encourage people to kind of have a look at it. But, I think unsurprisingly for us, maybe surprisingly for some, water quality came out as kind of a chief kind of concern, with respect to consumers, and that wasn't just sort of in one country, it was across multiple countries. Over 60% of respondents were kind of very, positive about companies being actively sort of supporting sort of policies to support fresh water. Over 2/3 of respondents felt that, governments and companies were the most responsible or needed to take responsibility for conserving and protecting water. But interestingly, on that one, the actual sort of perception of performance of those two groups was actually quite poor. So another interesting one in the context of the U.S., water was one of those topics that was, fairly consistently polled as being kind of importance across like the sort of Democrat-Republican sort of split.
Yeah.
So, whereas something like climate is a little bit more polarizing across those two groups, water was one where it was fairly sort of consistently high across those two groups. And so again, I think, it's certainly pointed from a corporate perspective to the need for companies to, certainly if you're a consumer-facing brand, for instance, if your consumers feel that water is a sort of a more material or strategic or important issue for them, why are we spending so much time talking about how much water you've saved? And so potentially there's this mismatch in communication between what a company is talking about with respect to their action to what people and their consumers care about. And then also, pushing further into the supply chain and addressing impacts. And kind of what we kind of mean by that is a lot of time when we look at kind of corporate action, it can sometimes feel like they're doing a lot or a lot's being done, but when we look at the boundaries of where does that action sit in the value chain or the supply chain, it's often kind of quite restricted to direct operations, for instance. And in many cases, that's not actually where the big water use or the big water impact lies. So there's some good signals within that data, which is reflected in some trends we're seeing certainly in Europe with the CSRD sort of regulations and kind of requirements for companies to kind of push into addressing material impacts. So there were some nice kind of correlations there.
I'm going to throw it back to Rob real quick, but Rob, I just want to do a follow up here real quick because I know. Rob, I'm just going to say, I can't help but focus on all the different aspects of water and, what corporations have to do and what consumers have to do when it comes to climate adoption or, applying nature-based solutions to, regenerative ag. I mean, all kinds of, the playing field is huge, right? So I just wanted to find out, just to, look from your perspective or from WWF's perspective, how do you see your partners and these corporations adopting this? Is there a big push for adoption? Do you see a lot of adoption, or is there some reticence or some pushback, Rylan?
Sometimes it depends on the sector. Some sectors are a little bit more sort of tuned to this, but I think you're right. I think there is a lot, and certainly sort of our general mantra is we want and we push companies to be doing more. But I think the challenge we have is we can ask for more, but the reality is, corporate resources are scarce, and companies need to deploy those effectively, and that goes the same for environmental issues. And so, a lot of the time when we're talking to our partners, we're not necessarily asking for for more everywhere. What we're asking for is more in strategic places, and I think that's not just a water issue. That's the sort of sustainability sort of challenge we have within the corporate sort of approach to sustainability. Is there's this expectation or this felt expectation that companies just need to do more, and what we really need to be, the message we really need to be sending is, yes, we need you to be doing more, but in more strategic places. And so sometimes it's okay to do less in places. If the impact's not there, if that's not where the big impact is, that's fine. Let's focus those resources on those places where we can actually deliver sort of greater impact with our dollars.
Well, sticking with the discussions you're having with Chris and us, in strengthening the global water stewardship, can you give an example of what your partnership is like, and can you pick a place where you have activities that are working and becoming successful or are successful?
Again, it really depends on where. I mean, we try and meet companies on their journey. So again, if they're kind of very new to the water topic, we will come in and we'll kind of work with them to kind of just help them understand their water risks across their supply chain. We then would start moving into sort of helping them to shape the strategies, target setting, sort of goal setting, sort of starting to set policies with respect to procurement potentially. But as we kind of get further into the partnerships, that's when we start trying to connect them to some of our sort of national teams and local teams who are actually delivering projects on the ground. And so we've got over sort of, certainly in our sort of the water stewardship community within WWF, we've got over 250 staff kind of globally working on different projects, anywhere from kind of India, Vietnam, sort of China, sort of Indonesia, South Africa, sort of Mexico. So it really is quite a diverse group and geography that we kind of do face and work on.
Well, I'm not ashamed to say when I watch some of these things in East Asia or the African areas, and you see these villages, and they're scarce with water, and they show pictures of them, and I come to tears when I see stuff like that, and I think people can do a lot more with what we have in technology, with companies all over the world that can help and take care of the people of this earth. I mean, it's a shame to me to watch people and animals suffer when there's no water. And what do they do when it rains? I mean, I see the torrential rains they have in Africa. How do they collect it? It really don't get collected. It just sinks into the ground or goes into the ocean. But, these are projects I think that need to be helped out where, they have no electric, no water. They need to be able to sustain themselves. Otherwise, they're all going to disappear, just like with all the animals. And that's kind of a shame. Hate to see that.
Yep.
Ryland, let's just talk about a specific issue or specific publication for you. You do a thing called Meandering Mondays on LinkedIn, and I've got to tell our listeners I've been reading for I don't know now since latter part of last year, and I'm enthralled by it, Ryland, and great work, buddy. So tell us a little bit about that and the ripple effect as well.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of started out probably about a year and a half ago, where it was just my kind of way of trying to kind of, reflect on things that were going on in my world. And it started out as kind of as you said, a Monday post under this kind of banner of Meandering Mondays, a bit of a play on words there and the topic. And in October, I moved it into a open sort of LinkedIn group, so people are welcome to go and check that out. It's Meandering sort of Mondays with Water LinkedIn group. And the rationale behind that was really to create a space for discussion and the dialogue with the community. I realize that a lot of the time we go to conferences, it's more one-way traffic. We don't always get to kind of talk about some of the day-to-day things that we're sort of experiencing and technical issues, but also even the personal issues. One of you today kind of, commented or sort of interacted with the Thursday post around kind of that over responsibility. So, certainly the Monday ones are a little bit more focused on kind of the technical aspects of our work. And then what I was finding was a lot of people were talking to me behind the scenes about, well, I'm struggling with this in my kind of day-to-day role, and more the human side of delivering the tasks. So the Thursday sort of posts are a little bit more about how do we actually sort of engage in these softer skills that we need to solve some of these challenges. So it's been a bit of a journey, but it's cathartic for me as well, and hopefully people get value out of it. So yeah, that's where it came from.
I certainly do, Ryland. I appreciate it, and I hope you keep it
great
up.
To hear.
Especially the one from this week. Yeah, and I did interact with that post, and it was great. So we got about just sub 2 minutes here before we have to hand over to NBC News Radio for their news hour. But if people are interested in finding out a little bit more about the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, what you do, perhaps Meandering Mondays, tell our listeners where they can go get this information.
I mean, we're a bit of a distributed network, so my kind of quick take would be go into Google, search for some of our resources. A lot of our resources, like you look at the water risk filter, there's a lot of resources and guidance within that, but feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and the Meandering Mondays kind of group is a good start, and you can always start connecting you into kind of specific kind of networks, because there's lots out there, and then also kind of think groups like the Alliance for Water Stewardship is also another good place for to get connected in and get resources.
Agreed.
Well, we love what you came on the show and talked about. We love the sound bites that we got from that, and learned a lot more about that. I didn't realize how much in depth you guys are doing in that, but I commend you, and hope our listeners go to your websites and take a look, and maybe even help support that. That would be a great thing to do.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Chris, anything else?
I know, Ryland, thanks very much for coming on the show and for the previous discussions getting to this point. Rob and I appreciate it much, very, very much indeed. And geez, we'd like to welcome you back at another time down the road. How's that?
Yeah, I'd love to join you guys again.
Great, we appreciate it. Well, you have a good weekend and up in Canada, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rylan. All right, Rob, let's lead him out, buddy.
Well, the most important thing we have to tell our audience is one thing. Please help keep our planet blue. Because if you like green, you got to have blue. So good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. Stay cool if you're in a hot place. Stay warm if you're in a cold place. And we'll be here next week. And we have some great guests coming up. So stick around and join us next week.
NBC News on KCAA.